Kia ora and welcome to our third podcast in our Thriving Voices, Thriving People series. Now, when we talk about diversity and inclusion, we automatically think about gender, age and culture. Often people with diverse accessibility needs are not necessarily front of mind. However, 1 in 7 Kiwis are neurodivergent, meaning that their brain functions, learns and processes information quite differently. Neurodivergence includes attention deficit disorders, autism, and dyslexia. So with a hugely disrupted labour market, notoriously low productivity levels, and talent and attraction and retention so critical to business and our economy right now, my wondering is, do we actually have a skills crisis? Or is part of a problem the fact that we're ignoring an existing pool of talent who bring diverse skills and thinking that business craves so much? To give us the lowdown on neurodiversity and why it's a competitive advantage for business, we are joined by Mike Stiles. Mike, my first question for you is to kick off. What is actually neurodiversity? And from your perspective, why is it so important to business and a New Zealand workforce?
So neurodiversity is best explained like this. All brains are different. That's how the humans get to be as successful as they are. But if a brain differs beyond a particular threshold, we say that brain is neurodiverse. Neurodiversity, as you've alluded to, includes dyslexia, which are issues around text. It includes dyscalculia, issues around numbers. It includes ADD and ADHD. That's around concentration and focus and issues like that. It includes a condition called Irlen syndrome, and it also includes things like autism spectrum disorder and Asperger's syndrome. Why should we worry about it? Well, as you've alluded, it's a large proportion of the population, and currently, because of our low understanding of what neurodiversity is, it becomes or has become a wasted resource in New Zealand. Dyslexia is the most common neurodiverse condition. Worldwide, we're talking 10%. There are different figures, but most of the authorities would say 10% of the population. ADHD, 2 to 3%. Dyscalculia, 3 to 4% of the population. And you may be aware that New Zealand, sitting alongside the neurodiversity issue, is an adult literacy and numeracy issue. I've worked in both of these fields for the last 12 years, and I can say to you confidently that the biggest cause of low adult literacy and numeracy, which is also a separate issue for productivity, the major cause of that is undiagnosed and or unsupported neurodiverse conditions.
So can you tell us about some of the opportunities and maybe some of the challenges that neurodiversity presents to business?
Firstly, as we've already talked about, it's largely invisible. People have terrible mindset issues about neurodiversity. We see it from a pathologized sense. In other words, we see what's wrong with people with dyslexia and other neurodiverse conditions, and that's blinded us to the positive sides. Now, some of the most successful people on the planet have dyslexia and other neurodiverse conditions. I'm sure you're all aware of Richard Branson. He's in the news right now. You may be in a New Zealand sense be aware about Richard Taylor from Weta Workshops, Sir Peter Leach, the Mad Butcher, Michael van der Elsen. Those are all New Zealand examples, and there are many, many more. But the point really is that the other side of dyslexia and those other neurodiverse conditions, which are challenges, are a whole lot of positive features. We know that people with dyslexia are known to have strong visual, spatial and 3D skills. We know that many of them are creative and innovative and are the kind of people that come up with different solutions to problems because their brain is wired differently. We know many of them are great people readers. They're very empathetic. We know that many of the world's most successful entrepreneurs have been people with dyslexia. So if you take nothing else away from today, if you take away the fact that these are not disabilities, these are differences, and that's potentially, if they're leveraged in the right way, they can be a very, very powerful weapon for New Zealand to get on top of its productivity issues.
So Mike, what are your top tips for businesses starting out on this journey?
Yes, that's a good point, Rob. High level things, you've got no idea the importance that senior leadership has in this, and so my first step would be some awareness training for senior leadership stroke board members, because change and sustainable change will only come from the top. Step number 2 would be some training for team leaders, supervisors, line managers, and those sorts of people who interact with the productive workforce on the shop floor or wherever it is, because they have a potential for maximum impact. My third step would be to look at your HR practices and procedures, look at how you advertise, look at how you recruit, look at how you induct staff. Because most dyslexic people, because of the history, are embarrassed by their condition. So a powerful thing you could do in the workplace is a simple message out to your staff, repeated several times, that this workplace is supportive of neurodiverse dyslexic people, and invite, and they'll take some time to do it, but invite them to self-identify if they know they have dyslexia. Don't expect them to straight away. They'll take some time to pluck up enough courage, because many of them have spent decades doing their very best to hide their condition. Well, one thing I can share with you for a start is the dreaded psychometric test. Now that is probably tough for many people, but it's doubly or triply tough for neurodiverse dyslexic learners. Because you see, there are other challenges they have alongside the reading, writing and spelling, and one of them is time and time management issues. So I know of many people who were asked to do a psychometric test and said, no thanks, I won't go ahead with this job application. If I have to do a psychometric test, I'm out the door. The other things, and these are kind of simple things that workplaces could do, you'll all be aware of those questions that happen in job interviews. You know, if you're lucky enough to get past the first cut of things and you get a job interview, things like multiple questions are very tough for dyslexic people. So you know the kind of question I've had it asked of me several times. So Mike, tell me about a time you were under great pressure. What did you do about it and how did you feel afterwards? Well, we know that dyslexic people struggle with short-term memory issues. So they'd be likely to try and answer the first, because that's 3 questions rolled into one. They'd be likely to forget the second and third question and concentrate just on the first one. So those are simple things that a workplace can do. I know that some workplaces now have got a dyslexia-friendly charter that basically says, and it says that about their clients as well as their staff, this is a dyslexia-friendly workplace or source or business, and we will do our best to support people with neurodiverse dyslexic kind of condition. Well, there's a guy at the Diversity Works who has an amazing signature underneath, a little descriptor underneath his signature at the bottom of his email. It says something like, the email above was written by somebody who has dyslexia. If you have difficulty with any aspect of it, please contact me, and please remember that most of the world's most creative people are known to have dyslexia. So that was a way of empowering people that read that email, that oh, this guy's dyslexic, and letting other people know that it's okay to be dyslexic is the first step in the process. For example, we know that they, because of their short-term memory issues, they work better with two screens. One screen with the information and the other screen with what they're doing with it. We know that people with dyslexia often struggle a little bit more in open plan offices, and so providing them with screening or whatever can make a really big difference in the workplace. But if you go online to that Ako Aotearoa website, it'll give some more clues to some pretty simple, straightforward things that employers can do. Look at good news stories, because the biggest thing you can do initially is to normalize or regularize dyslexia and other neurodiverse conditions.
And Mike, for those organizations that may be a little further down the leadership journey, recommendations, practical steps they can take next?
Yes, a few. Look at policy documents, because while they sometimes just stay in the drawer, they do influence the strategic direction of an organization. Another thing you might like to think about doing is build it into your strategic planning and report on it and maybe measure it. Because of course you and I both know that what's measured and reported gets actioned and changed and supported. You need to build it into the DNA, because what you have to avoid is having one person responsible for it and then they leave and the energy and impetus goes with them. So you've got to find a way of building it into the DNA of your organisation. Training for team leaders should be a continuing thing over a long period of time.
So Mike, for New Zealand business to be leading edge, what is your one challenge for business?
My one challenge is this, that we're always threatened by diverse people. Different cultures, different languages, different genders, whatever. Change your mindset to include these people. Don't think about the fact that they are different and think differently. See that as a good quality. Because the World Economic Forum, last year or the year before, publishing the skills in demand for the 21st century, most of the skills that were going to be in demand, like creativity, entrepreneurialism, soft skills like being able to empathize with people, those are the skills and talents that are often present in people with dyslexia.
Mike, thanks so much for taking time out to speak with us today, and it's been a pleasure to talk to you. And just to follow up on your point about storytelling, I do encourage SBC members watching this podcast to get in touch and to share with others their stories and their journeys, and we look forward to hearing from you. Mike, thanks again. Kia ora.
Kia ora.